listening to the best of the Martha Zoller Show. To hear the full show each day, tune in to AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN or log in to accesswdun.com and click the Listen Live button from 9 to 11 Monday through Friday. Joining me right now is Tina Descovich, who is one of the founders of Moms for Liberty. So welcome to the program. It's great to have you here.
It is an honor to be here with you. I appreciate the time.
Well, and I tell you, I am on the State Board of Education for the state of Georgia. I represent the 9th District, and I have been involved in public schools with my children. I was a stay-at-home mom for a long time and then got back into the workforce and have always been involved, whether on serving on committees, being room mothers, involved at school board meetings, all of that kind of stuff. And I love what you're doing because I think what the left is most afraid of is regular people organizing, taking time out of their busy lives, and shining a light on the agendas that they have, because basically they've been left alone because the average person is going to work every day. The average person is taking care of their family. It is hard to find time to advocate for issues if you're living your life the right way.
100%. Tiffany and I, the founders of Moms for Liberty, are both former school board members ourselves here in Florida. We served 2016 to 2020, and we like to say we saw behind the education curtain, which I'm sure you have a lot of vision into, serving on the State Board of Ed. But, you know, what we saw were things happening and parents had no idea they were happening. And we tried. I worked really hard to engage my community, to get involved, to get on the textbook review committees, and nobody was really interested. And it was unfortunate because as one school board member, I couldn't review every textbook for every subject for all 12 grades before I approved them. I really needed community involvement and help. And so part of what we do at Moms for Liberty is try to get parents engaged because it's just so important, especially now, once COVID happened, parents got to see what really was being taught, what was streamed into their living rooms, and they became concerned. And so we launched Moms for Liberty to help parents organize to fight back against a lot of that stuff.
And you're under attack right now. I mean, I saw an interview with Joy Reid. Was that you or was that your partner?
That was Tiffany.
That was Tiffany. I saw an interview with Joy Reid, which I thought was so interesting because, if somebody lives inside of a bubble, it's Joy Reid. I mean, she hasn't probably been, to a local school board meeting or any of that sort of stuff. She has been in the liberal bubble of going from the hired car to the roped off entryway into the studio and back again. So she doesn't know what the real world is like.
No, I think it was very clear. What a great interview. I encourage anyone to go Google that, Moms for Liberty, Tiffany Justice and Joy Reid, because, Tiffany was, you saw the bubble Joy was in because Joy thought she was going to gotcha by saying, do you really believe all parents have the right to direct the upbringing of their children? And I remember watching it live and going, why did she just ask her that? That's our mission statement. That's exactly what we believe. But she thought she was going to catch her in some kind of, gotcha moment. And they just don't understand what's happening and what's going on and how concerned parents really are. We've done national professional surveys, and 70% plus of parents agree with us on these issues. Just teach math, reading, science, history. Get back to the basics. Stop teaching gender ideology. Stop teaching 4-year-olds it can be a girl or a boy, neither or both. Parents just want kids to learn.
Well, and parents, should be involved in anything that's going on with their child, full stop. And I am sick and tired of parents being painted as abusers because that's always what they use. Oh, but maybe they can't talk about it at home because their parent abused them. Look, there are some parents that are bad parents, but the large majority of parents have the right to be involved in every decision that their child makes. They are loaning their children to the school to be educated. They are not giving their children to the school to be educated.
Yes, of course. All parents have the fundamental right to direct the upbringing of their children. That is what Moms for Liberty fights for. There are cases of parents that abuse, and there are plenty of laws and systems. Teachers are mandatory reporters. If they are being abused in their home or there's a threats of abuse, there are systems to take care of that situation.
Yeah, I mean, I had a situation with my daughter when she was 9 years old. She got in the car. I could tell something was wrong. And she shared with me that there was a little girl in her class that the teacher had noticed that she had a bruise on her. And the teacher had said, the kid had said her dog did it. And then she confided in my daughter that her dad had done it. And it was bothering her, of course. And so what we did was the next day we went to the counselor. We talked to the counselor, and as it turned out in this case, there had been other red flags about this particular family, and the situation got taken care of. That's a rare case, and it does mean that people have to get involved in things sometimes that are uncomfortable, right? But it was the right thing to do to go to the counselor and talk to them about it in that case. But the counselor ought to be interacting with the parent when things are happening with the child.
Absolutely. Again, that is what Moms for Liberty fights for. Parents have the fundamental right to direct the upbringing of their children. That's their medical care. That is their moral and religious upbringing. That's their education. The problem is everyone from school boards all the way up to the Biden administration now are getting involved at the education level. So in public schools, the rewriting of Title IX, which the Biden administration just did through the Department of Education. I think many people are aware, but many people aren't aware. That is supposed to go into effect August 1st. And what that is going to do, what that has done is it has added gender identity as a protected class. So historically, Title IX was one page long. It was meant to protect girls' sports, to protect rights of girls in schools and other places. And the rewrite has taken all of those things from girls. And so the government getting involved and inserting itself in these things, in these systems, and in families and in the relationship between the parent and the child is just wrong.
Well, and I'm a woman of a certain age. So I remember when Title IX came into play. And I am very angry about the kind of attack on what women have achieved. And also, it does seem like, and I'm not a liberal, I'm a conservative, but it does seem a little bit like the patriarchy trying to take away everything that we've gained. I'm sorry. Yes. It is one of those things.
Well, what do you call it? Women, finally had their sports and had their equal play time and were safe and protected in bathrooms and locker rooms and all of these things. And now a man that says he's a woman can invade all of those spaces under the new Title IX rewrite. And this can happen in schools without parents having any say or input. Young men can play in young women's sports if they say they feel like a young woman. You're not wrong. You are not wrong.
So why so involved in Georgia?
So Georgia is one of our key states right now. We've got several of them, but, Georgia is near and dear to my heart personally. I went to school at Valdosta State, and so I spent many years.
Great school. Great school.
Yes. It was Valdosta State College when I arrived and Valdosta State University by the time I left. I did spend 5 years, not 4, just because I changed my major a couple times. But Georgia is near and dear to me. I love Georgia. The people of Georgia are good folks. And, we only have 7 chapters. In Moms for Liberty, a chapter covers a county. And right now we only have 7 chapters in the state of Georgia, which is less. Like North Carolina has 22 chapters. And so the people of Georgia and the parents of Georgia deserve to have their voice heard. And that is done by organizing together and speaking up. And so we are, doing a lot of work in Georgia right now. If you are in certain areas, you will see, I think, over 45 or 50 billboards up around the state informing parents about what's going on with Title IX, because you may have great state leaders, but if they're taking any funds from the federal government into their schools right now, they are going to be forced to comply with that Title IX rewrite, and it's a threat to all of our girls.
It's where North Georgia comes to talk. It's the Martha Zoller Show on AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN.
It is the Martha Zoller Show, only in Chicago, where not only they elect a mayor that's very progressive, they went and elected a new mayor that's even more progressive. And now they don't even want to say that somebody's a criminal anymore. I just knew I had to talk to Ron Hart about this today because, Ron, words matter. And there is a whole part of the left in this country that think if you just change the words, you can make the problems go away.
Yeah, they're much better than that than we are. They have a good way of, working the focus group and see what words are and change them around, soften everything. They're good at, pro-choice and pay your fair share in taxes. And, anybody you disagree with them, you're greedy. All companies are greedy, et cetera. They have a great way of wordsmithing things. And that's just another way of kind of getting away from accountability, getting away from sensibility, and saying justice impact individuals. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I mean,
it's funny. It is hysterical because justice, I guess, does impact some individuals more than others. I mean, look at what's happened in this Trump trial, which I think is so interesting because I think the tide has really turned. I mean, he's starting to raise money. It seems like this structure of only being able to speak at the breaks of the trial has been really helpful for him because it keeps him on message. But even the bookies are saying it's a 75% chance it's going to be a hung jury. So it seems like the tide has turned.
Yeah, and that's the only reason Stormy Daniels showed up. She heard there might be a hung jury. I think these are pretty good. I mean, they seem like they want to get it quick. They asked for it last night. They want to get it back. Maybe it's had enough of this. I mean, you see enough of the Democrat Party, certainly where it wants to go, which is where these people, Alvin Bragg and Fonnie Willis, are. And no one really generally likes it. You can't like that, right? You can like it in theory, but when you see it, you don't really like it. It's not pretty. And so hopefully they'll get him out. My fear is that they're afraid to not convict him because they live in New York City, and the left wing of the party will always dox you. I mean, if you live in New York City, you're a computer programmer or whatever, you're a financial person who votes no on conviction, your name's going to be in the paper. They're going to tell you where you live. Your life's going to be miserable. You have to leave New York. I mean, that's the only fear, the intimidation of not convicting them. And somebody asked me yesterday what the jury instructions by the judge will be, which are crucial. No one understands what the case is about. So the jury instructions from the judge is crucial, and my best guess is he's going to tell them to go convict him. My instruction to you is I don't know what's going on here, but y'all need to go convict him and let me know you did it.
Well, and then yesterday, I thought in general the Biden folks had been smart in just staying out of all of this. But yesterday they had a group from the Biden campaign, that's how they were identified, that was led by Robert De Niro, another 80-year-old. I, again, love his movies, all of that, but don't really want to hear his advice on, legal matters. And
a buffoon.
Yeah, and he's 80 years old. I mean, do they really think that's the best thing to do, to keep bringing out a bunch of 80-year-olds? And then they're going to do a speech from the White House, regardless of whether it's a guilty or not guilty verdict, with the theme of our justice system works or something like that. I just think they ought to stay out of it altogether, but far be it from me to give Democrats advice.
Let them do what they want to do. They're going to hang themselves. The piousness of a White House speech over this, something you orchestrated and lost on, either way they're going to claim victory. If they, he'll act like he's above it all and Trump's so low and he just did this. He's so above it all that, it's ridiculous. And he also witness tampered. He went and see this wife of Beau Biden, who was Hunter Biden's mistress or whatever for a while. They did drugs together. Who's the witness in his gun trial? Is that not jury tampering? It's like, Loretta Lynch on the runway with Bill Clinton. It's that type of jury tampering. Biden went to see her yesterday. Hadn't seen her in forever and never gone to her house. I mean, right 3 days before she testifies in the Hunter Biden situation.
Yeah, and then she was also married to to his older son, and is his widow. And it's just weird. It's just really weird.
Yeah, it's a weird. Maybe with the sniffer hair. I mean, who knows?
I don't know.
That was a crazy family. And he showered with one of the girls. I mean, it's just a weird deal that the press is left alone. And I think people are starting to see for what it is. Hopefully that there'll be a not guilty verdict. Not guilty would be beautiful. 12 people in New York City say not guilty. I mean, that would be incredible. I mean, a hung jury, possible. That would be days and days and days. But they feel like they got their mind made up. It strikes me they want the case. And it could be bad. It could be their mind made up. They're going to convict them. Maybe we didn't see everything in there, and they've been converted and hot boxed and they feel like he's guilty, and who knows? But I doubt it.
Well, I mean,
really
when Michael Cohen is your star witness, and it really, I mean, I've watched enough Law and Order to know that the question should be: are you lying now, or are you lying? Were you lying then? Because he is a convicted criminal. He admitted to other crimes that he did, and those are not the best witnesses.
Yeah, it's but the Democrats' reason they're doing this press conference, De Niro, they're panicking. I mean, there's panic in every voice that when Biden goes on, his eyes, you look in his eyes, it's like the check engine lights are flashing. I mean, the Captain of Hindenburg had less distress in his voice when he asked for a fire extinguisher than they have right now, it seems like.
Absolutely. Ron Hart, what are you writing about this week?
About this notion of threat to democracy. That's our whole thing. Oh, he's a threat to democracy. And I'll list 10 things where Democrats are a threat to democracy, not the Republicans.
Can you give us one or two?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the Colorado Supreme Court pulling Trump off the ballot. That's obviously a threat to democracy. That's ridiculous. Putting him in the lawfare, put into these kangaroo courts. If there is a verdict by the Trump jury in New York, they'll come out. They'll lead, such a kangaroo court. They'll probably, the lead juror will come out and probably pull the verdict out of his pouch.
That's funny. Ron Hart, you can go to ronaldhart.com. We always have a lot of fun with you. Thanks for being with us today.
Take care.
It's local radio, and that's why you're listening. It's the Martha Zoller Show on AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN.
Let's go to Bill Crane right now for Crane's Corner. And look, Bill, I feel kind of a sea change on this thing. There's this weird thing that's happened where Trump has actually been very disciplined during this process, where he's only had certain times of the day that he could speak to the public. He's had these big, unusual events, not the typical events that he's had. His fundraising is up. It's a weird thing because it feels like the tide is turning. You do a lot of these man on the street interviews where people that you wouldn't think would be Trump supporters are saying, he's been treated rawly. And the bookmakers are saying it's a 75% chance for a hung jury. So it feels like, and we won't know till the verdict comes down, but it feels like this could go in Trump's favor.
I definitely think the strong circumstantial case was made, but I agree with you. The chances for one or two of those jurors saying they don't see it as enough to convict. And I also think this has benefited Donald Trump's campaign in many ways. It's basically kept him out of the minutia because he's been busy with this court case and making the appearances. It's kept him from the random Truth Social posts that might get him in additional trouble with other audiences around the country. It's allowed his campaign consultants to run his campaign pretty effectively. So I'm not saying it's a net positive to be facing a felony trial, but, as is often the case with Donald Trump, the rules are different, and he appears to be benefiting from it. I also agree that he has received treatment that if he were Joe Biden or a Democratic candidate, probably wouldn't be receiving.
And that's the key there. I'm starting to see, especially now, granted, these are man-on-the-street type interviews, so these are people that are willing to talk to someone with a microphone. I know it's not scientific, okay? But you're seeing these very interesting interviews with women of color, some Hispanic, some black, where they have typically been pretty strong Democrats, but they verbalize this piling on feeling that maybe he did something wrong, but it sure seems like the justice system is working against him.
Well, you got that, and again, if this were, let's say, Robert Kennedy on trial, you wouldn't have 17 cameras from all around the world parked just outside the courtroom. So there's a difference in the piling on by the media. There's a difference in what the court case takes up. There's a difference. Think about what Bernie Madoff did and how many people that he made impoverished who entrusted their life savings with him. And yes, he died in prison, but his sentence was not as severe as what Donald Trump faced from a financial standpoint on the fraud trials, on the worth and value of his property. So there's a pretty strong and pervasive sense, I don't think it's partisan, that says this isn't fair. This is not the judicial system.
Yeah, and he's been charged with things when they can't find a victim. It's like banks got paid back. on the other trial, banks were paid back.
Loans were repaid. He may have inflated the values, but the mortgage got paid.
And let me tell you something, Bill. What I think one thing people could relate to, even though Donald Trump is valuing, huge pieces of property, the average person thinks their house is worth more than what it really is. So the idea,
if they want to sell it, particularly if they want to sell it,
absolutely.
And they of course want the property tax valuation to be low.
That's
so
right.
There's a lot of people who aren't real estate developers who understand the difference between what your house is worth when you're borrowing for a second mortgage or you're listing it on the market to sell, and what you want to pay in terms of assessment and appraisal from your county in terms of property taxes.
So there's this guy out there called Charlemagne the God who is very well known on a radio show called The Breakfast Show. He has books and all that kind of stuff. We have this little bit of audio that I want to play, Bill, because I think he hits the nail on the head for where the average voter is right now.
Why do you think he's falling short among black voters?
I think that, it's not even just black voters as you see. It's Latino voters, it's youth voters. I think my man Tim Ryan coined the perfect phrase when he said that, most people in America are part of the exhausted majority.
So this term exhausted majority, I was watching this interview last night and I thought, that's the way people feel. They feel like they have been through such a ringer for the last 8 years that, and really it started before that. I mean, even though Obama led in a different way, people were coming out of the Great Recession. So people have felt put upon for a really long time, and the exhausted majority. But is the exhausted majority going to stay on the couch, or are they going to get out and vote?
I think it's going to be a base election. I don't think there's going to be a lot of undecideds going in. I do think both parties are understanding they're going to have to turn their people out. And Joe Biden is a weak nominee. I mean, there's just no other way to describe the mix in his policy, his physical appearance, his mental acuity. He's weak. And whether you want to talk about Donald Trump's blurbs or blips or misstatements on the campaign trail, they're not as frequent and they're not as damning. Yeah, I mean, Joe Biden, I think I'm on 16 counts on how many different ways, and I'm not making light of the loss of his son, Beau, but he didn't die on the battlefield. He didn't die in Afghanistan. He didn't die in Iran. He didn't die in Iraq. And he did die of brain cancer, and there is a possibility that he got the cancer from a burn pit when he was serving overseas. He is a veteran, but that's not an insignificant detail. And it seems like forever who the audience is when he talks about that, particularly on Veterans Day or Memorial Day, his answer varies, and people take notice.
Do you think it's fair to say that Donald Trump has solidified his base and that there's still people, obviously there are Republicans that voted for Nikki Haley that are still on their way over, and there's going to be some left-leaning or some right-leaning Democrats, but that the base is secure? Because that's my observation. And
yeah, I would say that's on the money, and Nikki Haley's tacit endorsement, well, it was an endorsement of Donald Trump last week. I don't know how many Nikki Haley voters cross over, but it does say if you got to pick.
But Biden seems to still be shoring up his base. There are still groups of people that are solidly Democrat that he doesn't have completely in his camp.
Well, look at the primary turnout last week here. The Democratic Party base did not show up. Republicans had fewer significant races locally in terms of number, fewer incumbents facing incumbents, and significantly polled the Democrats in a statewide contest where more than half the vote is in Metro Atlanta and the secondary metro areas.
Well, and this is something like for you to just put on your radar, but I don't know if you saw the story of the two Republican women in Oconee County that are running as Democrats for local elections. They're running for county commission, and they're running for clerk of the court. And then in the 11th district, Katie Stamper is a longtime Republican who ran in the Democratic primary and is going to be the nominee. And there is this. I think it's interesting. I think it's really interesting because these are women that are still saying they're conservative, but they're not running as Republicans.
Both parties have schisms and need to understand that not everybody is going to be a partisan core platform person and run to the extreme right and left. And I'm hopeful if anything happens in this election, no matter the outcome, both parties understand there's a whole lot of voters in the middle that nobody's talking to.
Yeah, and middle doesn't necessarily mean moderate. they may identify as
center and move back and forth on different issues.
That's right.
And then, Chase Lawrence, the Libertarian candidate who's running, who probably gets 1%, even though he is a Georgian. This is the opportunity for third parties, and they're still not striking. Robert Kennedy still can't get enough petitions signed to make states ballots in most states. And, the upshot is people want other choices, but they don't see any other choices they like.
And Chase Oliver of Georgia got the presidential nomination for the Libertarian Party last week.
Say that again?
Chase Oliver of Georgia got the Libertarian nomination for president last week. Did you miss that?
Oh, I know. Yeah. And he is somebody who has run twice for the office, Senate and state U.S. House of Representatives, and he's in his 30s. Again, the things people say they wanted a stronger, younger, more vibrant candidate, but there's, no indication that even here in Georgia, where he's from, that he'll get more than a couple percentage points, which in some tight battleground states may be decisive. I mean, Al Gore lost Florida to George W. Bush, 600 votes back in 2000. But I honestly don't feel the contest is going to be that close.
Well, and I was surprised, actually, that the Libertarian Party didn't end up going for Robert Kennedy because if they really want to make an impact and get more than 2% of the vote, they need a name like Robert Kennedy.
I agree that for them to be relevant, they continue to make themselves the Harold Stassen of U.S. politics. And I was surprised by that, and I was surprised by the volume of the boos that Donald Trump got. I mean, usually the Libertarian Party is a faction of the GOP.
Yeah.
And at their national convention, it wasn't a slight number of boos. It was loud, and he's not used to getting it. His facial reaction was also rather interesting when you see the video.
Bill Crane, your columns are always up on Access WDUN, and we appreciate you being with us today for Crane's Corner.
Take care.
To hear the full versions of last week's Martha Zoller shows, go to the podcast page at accesswdun.com, and you can follow me on social media at Martha Zoller.